The dining room of my grandmother's Victorian mansion was filled with the aroma of her famous roast, but all I could smell was the condescension of my sister Amanda, who was adjusting her Cartier bracelet and giving me another sour look as she passed the gravy boat. Olivia then began to ask, "Were you still doing that food thing 3 years ago when I left my six-figure job?" "If they only knew that the food truck was doing well," I said softly, slicing into my roast beef with the sterling silver knife that had been handed down through for generations. My family had taken my decision to start a food truck as a personal insult, and now, as we sit at our traditional Christmas dinner, they still view me as the embarrassment of the Harvard MBA graduate who decided to sell tacos rather than work for the family investment firm. "Olivia, your father would be mortified. Dad had died 5 years ago, leaving behind a legacy of traditional success, board seats, country club memberships, and strict expectations for his children." Uncle Philip scoffed from the head of the table, saying, "Just like the expectations I'd chosen to ignore." Well, Amanda had followed the plan flawlessly, becoming a senior partner at the Anderson way. "Isn't it?" Amanda announced. "Do you know I just made partner, the youngest in the firm's history?" "Congratulations," I said, masked, checking my phone under the table for another notification. "I chose a different path. I make enough to get by." I am hiding a smile behind my wine glass. "The 82 Bordeaux probably cost more than what they thought." "I made in a month," Uncle Philip offered, not for the first time, that there is always room at Anderson Capital for family, even after your regrettable career choices. I considered the documents in my bag, the Ford magazine, the acquisition papers, and the evidence of everything I had built while they were there. My CFO had told me that the Tokyo acquisition had closed 5 more restaurants and added to the empire, but they knew nothing about it. Busy sneering at my little food truck, but timing was everything in business and retaliation. "How much can you make with a food truck?" my cousin Bradley asked. "What's your annual revenue?" and laughed at the joke. 5 figures. I fought back a laugh. But last quarter's revenue alone was 9 figures, but they didn't need to know that until the right time. Speaking of numbers, Amanda carefully put down her fork. "We should trust the family now that I'm a partner. I believe it's time to review the distribution, and that's where the true cause of the increased contempt this year was found." Grandma's eyebrows went up a little, even though she may be getting close to 90, but she didn't miss anything. "The trust is set up fairly," she said firmly, "with equal shares for everyone." Amanda looked sharply at me and my off-the-rack dress as I considered my most recent acquisition, a chain of upscale restaurants spread across 3 continents. The paperwork had closed this morning, adding another billion to the empire I'd built from a small business. "However, some of us are obviously doing more with the opportunity," Amanda pressed. "My sister was on a roll, but this must be said, Dad left us a legacy." "What did you do with your share of the initial inheritance?" "Olivia purchased a truck and some cooking equipment." It's embarrassing that the initial inheritance of $250,000 each had been the catalyst for Amanda's dream. "You're right," I said quietly. "I did buy a truck." Finally, she acknowledges. I throw up my hands at Harvard MBAs serving street food. You know what people say about how it reflects on us. I had invested in my first food truck, East Meets West Eats, with a menu that combined Asian street food with American classics. By the second week, the lines had begun to form. The article in last month's Wall Street Journal, which was carefully concealed from my family, described how I had quietly established one of the fastest-growing hospitality groups in the world. Bradley added the absurd name East Meets West Eats, which sounds like a cheap takeout place. The name was now trademarked in 47 nations. The company that expanded from a single truck to 300 eateries, the empire that none of them had observed, developing because they were too preoccupied to assess its modest beginnings. Last week, I saw your truck in the business district, and Amanda was still standing there in the cold, serving food to office workers. I was at the truck that day, not because I had the fact that none of them recognized me in my food truck uniform. While I was quietly serving, corporate warriors and construction workers alike spoke about how they saw service workers, But Grandma interrupted her speech with that subtle authority that came from old money your grandfather started in, kept me grounded and connected to where I started. I asked quietly, do we just pretend they were to justify looking down on certain kinds of work? And Amanda rolled her eyes. Oh, spare us the working class hero speech, she said. You're not some inspirational story, Olivia. You're a cautionary tale, she said. Making actually work the factory floor that was different. Uncle Philip protested those times. The word truck hung in the air like a challenge around the table, and I noticed the same looks of disappointment and condescension that I had received 3 years prior when I had parked my first truck on the corner of 47th and Madison. Slowly and deliberately, I reached for. Amanda sat back triumphantly after she finally realized why I had slid the magazine onto the table. Being referred to as the fastest growing restaurant chain in North America is extremely embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as this cover photo. The silence that descended upon the table was complete, and I stood with my chef's whites crossed and my arms crossed. Grandma's fork clattered to her plate as the silence at my grandmother's antique dining table stretched like pulled caramel, sweet, tense, and ready to snap. Amanda's face had gone through multiple shades of red before settling on a sickly pale. Uncle Philip's hands. The headline read, "The Food Truck Revolution. How Olivia Anderson Built a Billion-Dollar Empire One Meal at a Time." He shook and grasped for the magazine, saying, "This is inconceivable," as he quickly turned the pages. Billion-dollar empire. 3 billion actually? Bradley choked on his drink this morning, so I had another slice of roast beef at 43 upscale fusion restaurants throughout Japan. I gently revised the magazine before it went to press before the Tokyo acquisition closed. After our triumph in Singapore last year, Amanda's voice was hardly audible. But who is the East Meets West Restaurant Group? Although we keep distinct brand names for various market segments, the 50 food trucks that are currently spread throughout major cities still use the original branding, while the fine dining establishments use more upscale names like La Fusion. Suddenly, everyone turned to Uncle Philip continued to look at the magazine, but when I mentioned that I was making ends meet with the food truck, I took out my phone and opened my portfolio. Look at her, she smiled. That new place on 5th Avenue that's impossible to get into is yours, isn't it? I nodded, along with Golden Bridge in San Francisco, Sky Fusion in Chicago, and roughly 300 other places worldwide. The first truck made $800,000 in its first year, and by the second year, we had 5 trucks and our first small restaurant. The idea was so successful that investors begged to participate in series of funding. Even though I kept a controlling interest, I said casually that you should never let anyone dictate your vision. Amanda found her voice, but you work the truck. I saw you standing there in that uniform. It's company policy for everyone, from the CEO to the employees, to regularly experience the front lines because it keeps us connected to our customers and employees. I smiled when you saw me, probably earning 7 or 8 figures in other deals between serving orders and the trust fund. Amanda said, suddenly, your portion. What did you do? Grandma's eyes glistened. She had always been more perceptive than anyone gave her credit for. Would it have anything to do with Anderson Capital's recent troubles? Uncle Philip's head snapped up. I cut every penny of it because it was built from the first food truck. Speaking of the trust, though, I took another document out of my bag. I bought most of your corporate bonds at a discount last March, when you loudly told everyone at Easter brunch that my little food experiment would never amount to anything. You know that your company is on the verge of bankruptcy, so I finished for him because I've been buying your debt through shell companies for the past year, waiting for the right moment. I pulled up a picture on my phone and said, today's truck special was Kobe beef sliders with wasabi aioli and pickled bacon. We sold out by noon, just like we do every day at every location. Interesting timing. Wouldn't you say that Amanda stood up so quickly that her chair toppled backward? This is a trick. Some sort of elaborate joke. I turned to Grandma, which made me wonder how you would feel about us establishing a site here. The old Anderson factory building is deserted, and I think the cemetery would be suitable. Uncle Philip snapped, but Grandma said quietly, I think it is, and I think it's a wonderful idea, Olivia. Olivia's voice rose to a shriek. You can't be serious. She left the family business to work as a food vendor, so I corrected myself while standing slowly. I decided to start my own company, and now I'm offering to help save yours. I went to Uncle Philip Anderson, who said, I'm willing to offer that in exchange for a controlling interest and a complete reorganization of the management structure. He sank into his chair. How do you know the exact amount? Because I've had a team looking over your books for It's Cold, I said firmly. To make fun of someone's dreams, assume that success only looks one way, and treat service workers like they're beneath you while they're building. For months, did you really think that new junior analyst, the quiet one you never bothered to speak to, was just another employee? She reports directly to me. You never realized that I reached into my bag one last time and pulled out a stack of contracts. This is how it will work. Anderson Capital will become a subsidiary of East Meets West Group, and Uncle Philip will be offered a non-executive position on our board. Of course, a real estate package that I purchased last month, so expect as the family matriarch glanced around the table at Uncle Philip's defeated slump, Amanda's shocked fury, Bradley's growing admiration, and then back to me. Her eyes were bright with something that looked like pride. Some changes to the lease terms. You can't do this, Amanda whispered. But I can. And I am. Grandma, of course, gave her blessing. Didn't only work on the factory floor. He also drove the delivery truck himself every Saturday. Even after he purchased the business, she raised her glass of wine to new beginnings based on hard work. And I did the same. However, Amanda wasn't done yet. She hissed, you may have your upscale restaurants and your corporate takeovers, but you're still the girl who built a billion-dollar empire while you were busy gazing down your nose at a food truck. I propose who now owns the building where you work, the loans your company took out, and the future of the family business. I grinned and said, you're right. It's not over. It's just getting started. I checked my phone one last time. And if you don't mind, I have to answer this call because the London expansion won't negotiate itself. I stood straightening my simple dress, and I noticed that Amanda was eating. 1 month after the Christmas dinner revelation, I sat in what had been Uncle Philip's office on the top floor of Anderson Capital. The mahogany desk was still there, but the wall of old pictures of 3 generations of Anderson man had been replaced with a single picture of my first food truck parked on a busy street corner with a line of customers were lining up around the block when I heard a knock on the door. Amanda came in, looking uneasy in business casual instead of her typical designer suits. The new dress code was just one of many changes, she said stiffly, setting a folder on my desk and the staff feedback surveys regarding the new corporate lunch program. Oh, my favorite innovation was that every Anderson Capital employee now received a complimentary lunch from one of our food trucks, which rotated through the corporate plaza every day. This was a way to boost morale and remind some executives where real success could begin. Thank you. I opened the folder and asked how she was adjusting to her new role. Her jaw tightened because I had moved her from. I pulled up a calendar on my tablet and saw that next week is the grand opening of our new flagship location, the factory conversion, and she frowned, thinking that was months away. I smiled when you told her that she had been promoted from senior partner to head of community outreach, a position that required her to actually interact with the people she had spent years looking down on. It's educational, but she handled it well because I need you to handle something special. The old Anderson factory will reopen next Thursday as Heritage Hall, a combination upscale restaurant, culinary school, and community space. What do you need from me? You love our scholarship program, which provides full-ride culinary training for deserving students from disadvantaged backgrounds, the same people you used to walk past. You have 300 restaurants worldwide, so you learn how to move fast. Without realizing it, I was working in food service. Is this retribution for the way we treated you, Amanda? No. It's an opportunity of the same kind. No matter where you start, I had the chance to create something meaningful. I stood walking to the window. Did you know that 70% of our restaurant managers began? Bradley's voice came from the doorway, but you saw it all by yourself, didn't you? I turned to see my cousin leaning against the frame, looking surprisingly happy. I didn't know that, of course. Not because you, like most people born to privilege, never looked past the surface, never saw the potential in a food truck, a service worker, or any success that didn't match your predetermined vision. After the Christmas revelation, Bradley approached me about learning the business from the ground up. He had spent the previous month working in our kitchens, learning every aspect of operations, and was now comfortable in the chef whites he wore as part of our management training program. His new badge of honor was calluses on his hands, replacing his Rolex, and he said, "The first truck arrives in 10. Ready for the lunch rush?" He asked, minutes. Amanda was perplexed. "You're not really going to work the truck?" "Of course I am." I took off my blazer, exposing the well-known East meets West uniform underneath. "Starting today, every executive works a shift at least once a week, including you." Her voice went up a notch. "But I'm not sure how to teach you." Bradley smiled as though I had, saying that nothing teaches humility like being slammed during lunch rush, as if on cue Uncle Philip had already shown up in his uniform. The former banking titan had shocked everyone by embracing his new role in operations management with unexpected zeal, and today's special is selling out at every I handed Amanda her uniform because we're going to serve it to 300 hungry finance workers who used to be your colleagues. She stared at the clothes as if they might bite. I checked my phone, and Grandma was coming to watch. By the way, she's thinking about investing in our next expansion round, which caught her attention. He reported that the fusion fake burger concept is a hit. I smiled when she said that the food truck wasn't working, but she wanted to see the magic happen. She said it reminded her of the times when her grandfather used to let her ride along in the delivery truck back when the Anderson name meant more than just status. Amanda glanced at the uniform once more before asking me if she really wanted us all to be serving street food. "I want you to know that every job has dignity, every worker has potential, and every success story has a beginning." I pointed to a picture of my first truck, which wasn't embarrassing. Rather, it was foundational. As the lunch crowd gathered beneath the plaza, sounds of voices rose from the now familiar side of our trucks, signaling that Bradley was coming. "Sis." Amanda hesitated for a moment. As we made our way to the plaza, I reflected on that first day with my truck. "I still think you're crazy," she said, but her voice was less raspy than before. "You're crazy enough to build an empire from a food truck," I reminded her, "but not crazy enough to save the family business. I think sometimes the best revenge isn't serving it cold, but serving it with a side of humble pie." "Hey, Olivia," Amanda called as we arrived at the plaza. "That was aioli sauce. Will you teach me how to make it?" I smiled. Perhaps there was hope for her, but the foundation of the empire remained the same. It was good food, honest work, and the quiet satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. "You have to work for your kitchen, sis. Recipes. Let's now demonstrate how to operate the